you mentioned nutrition. How involved do you get on that side of things?
100%, 100%,
And
100%.
are there any, with it being, I suppose it's like exercise really. There's so many different diets, and there's fasting and low fat and high fat. Is there anything in terms of building resilience in terms of your nutrition that you find that regardless of the types of people that you're working with, you found that these are some basics that you should just get in place outside of everything else?
Well, it's tough because you look at well, first off, yes, and I kept interrupting you. I apologize, 100%, 100%, because for me, the training part's the easy part because I've created thousands of programs in my life, and they're all great and they all work, and some better for certain people than others. But the first thing I'm always asking an individual is about sleep and digestion, right? Those are kind of the first, and then right after that, I'm getting into nutrition. Nutrition is, I think, one of the most misunderstood areas. I think everyone wants to coin a specific diet. They want to name a specific diet. There's always some type of trick. There's always some type of immediate response that they're looking for out of doing a specific nutritional plan. Like now, I think something like the ketogenic diet, I think it's needed for certain individuals, right? But most people are doing it because of taking more of a yo-yo dieting approach because they're dehydrating the muscle of water, and that's showing them a way to quantify their success by standing on a scale. I take a much different approach. I believe in high quality food, right? It's like high quality nutrients, macro and micro, and I believe in metabolic flexibility. And for those people who don't understand what that is, we have two energy sources. We have our fats and we have our carbs, and I believe we should use them both. And in doing that, our metabolism has to become flexible in using those macronutrients at specific times during the day. It's why I joined a company that's called Lumen. It's been incredible. It's a little chamber that you breathe into, and it actually measures, whether you need to be more on a higher carb day and a higher fat day. And I got information about that on my YouTube page that someone can go and read about. It's very interesting. But at the end of the day, what Lumen's really promoting is metabolic flexibility. It's telling you that, nope, you need carbs and you need fats. And anytime we just turn around and we rid our body of one of those nutrients, I find ourselves less able to be able to utilize those macronutrients when we consume them. And at some point, listen, if you're doing a ketogenic diet, if you're doing a low carb diet, at some point you're going to cave in, right? Like it's going to happen where you're just going to go eat that pizza or go eat those nachos. You're going to go out, you're going to have a few beers or whatever it is. And what happens at that point? And the reason why I love metabolic flexibility is because it's allowing ourselves to use those different energy sources, but it's also allowing our system to not take such a huge hit. For example, someone cuts carbohydrates for 2 weeks and they lose 8 pounds and they're all excited. And then the holidays come around, Thanksgiving's next week, and they go and they eat a lot. They're sitting there the next day getting discouraged, going, oh my God, I gained 5 of it back. I feel like when you are focusing on a flexible metabolism, your system's getting a little bit more resilient, and you're able to utilize those nutrients a little bit more in a positive way rather than it showing up on your system in a negative way. And I really think this all comes down to mindset and how you're approaching nutrition, which is a much longer conversation.
The carbs and the fats is an interesting one because it's talked about a lot, and some people fall into two very strong camps and have good arguments about it. And I was going to ask you that question, but I also read about Lumen, and maybe for a moment, I think that's just an interesting thing to talk about because so the Lumen product then, does that tell you what your body needs in terms of carbs and fats then? Is that what
it does. It takes a few days for the system to actually learn what's going on in your body. So I would never say if you were to buy one, start listening to the information out of the gate. I would take about a week. But yeah, I've used it with bodybuilder friends of mine who, unfortunately, because of photo shoots, were so high on the protein and so low on the fats and carbs because of that they had to stay lean, that they really ended up developing issues with their metabolism. I have friends of mine that are 250, 260 pounds that are, world-class competitors that couldn't, on certain days, I could consume 600-700 grams of carbohydrates, healthier carbohydrates, but my body doesn't get fat. I actually use that to my advantage. My muscles might fill with a little bit more glycogen. I might get a little fuller. My energy level might go up a little bit. And that's why I feel like that every day, even at 44 years old, like I'm still able to set PRs in lifting. I'm still able to run. I played ice hockey this morning at a game. My energy level's high. My movement quality is high. So I know once our nutrition starts falling, to the side a little bit, energy starts diminishing, our ability, our wanting, our willingness to want to move and stretch and do all these things that we want to do really begins to diminish. I think part of the problem is that, anytime someone hops on something new, they have this feeling of like success, right? Like, you hear it all the time. What was that terrible movie? It was on, oh God, it was on, oh God, it was on. I'm not smashing plants here, but I love plant strong diets. But it was talking about, it was a documentary in the last few years that was basically bashing people who eat animal protein.
Yeah, okay.
James Cameron was one of the. Yeah. I'm drawing a blank right now. I don't even know why, but I think there was a scene in the movie where they took a bunch of firefighters. And they were like, oh, these firemen are drinking beers and eating Doritos and eating fast food. And then they like go grocery shopping for them. Like, ooh, right? And it's like they show up with plants and grains. And they're like, we're going to substitute like a bean patty instead of like the McDonald's hamburger you're eating. And within like a week, they all lost weight. Like, oh my God, like groundbreaking news. You just removed all this crap from their diet. And you added in all this beautiful stuff, and they saw a response from it, right? But what the documentary didn't necessarily show was how many of these people, from neglecting themselves of animal protein, would actually be deprived of specific nutrients, or how many athletes who went plant-based, became either a vegan or a vegetarian, ended up having to go back to eating animal protein because specific, blood markers on them plummeted, or specific nutrients that they were once getting in their body, they weren't getting anymore. And this isn't to bash veganism or bash vegetarians, but it's just people will hear these stories and then they'll be like, oh, okay, I don't know any better. Like, let me give that a try, where the information needs to be a little bit better. And I can't tell you, starting with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, research experts that will go on and say, no, that documentary was terrible. Like you're not, but people are all battling, right? But anytime you start something new, it's going to feel good. You just have to ask yourself, is this a good long-term approach?
What are your thoughts on fasting or intermittent fasting? Because that's also, I've been trying the sort of 16-8,
Yep.
and I've found it, particularly as I've been traveling, I found that's worked quite well for me. Not that I'm trying to lose weight, but I kind of feel pretty good. My sleep is pretty decent. I've stopped eating quite as late and started later. Probably don't consume quite as much food in that window, but the food I do consume is sort of set meals. So do you have a view on either fasting or time restricted eating?
Yeah, I'm into it. I mean, I'm actually running I run challenges every month, and I know in January, a nutritionist I work with, Coach Adam Ross, and I are creating a 2-week elimination diet. And in that, we're going to throw in a few days of fasting early on. I'm fine with it. I think so let me go on record to say, I do like fasting, but when I don't like it is when people are using that to rebound from a poor day's worth of eating, or they're gonna do intermittent fasting during the day because they know they're gonna go out and crush a few vodkas and have a few hamburgers at night. Like that's when I think, or like, what about trying to put muscle on? Like when you're fasting and you're not eating for 16 hours and you have an opportunity to get your nutrients in 8 hours a day, like that's going to be difficult for you to get in the macronutrients you need to put on muscle. I'm fine with it because I like what it does from a brain function standpoint. And I think a lot of people like yourself who live healthy lifestyles are going to keep the train on the tracks, and they're going to make good decisions most of the time. And I think for a while it works. But I think what people start noticing down the road is maybe this decrease in energy, right? Or this decrease in muscle mass. And that's something I want to be careful with, because as we're getting older, we need to maintain a level of muscle mass. And that's something that people are really afraid of.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.